And it's hard to get to Albuquerque, you know, if you have to get the shuttle, you know, and I just, it's not something I'm really interested in doing. I'm trying to talk him into letting me do minutes for his mom. And if you believe that, no, he's the shooter. He's the shooter. See who counts in our family.
Yeah, I see who counts. We're right behind you there, Kyle. Doing good? Miss Louise?
Yolanda? Yolanda, do you have a second?
Oh, man.
Minnie? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Minnie, I got something there a little bit. Hey, how are you? Oh, they met you?
Oh my goodness.
Sweetheart. Yes.
There's also some other people in the League of Women Voters.
Oh, thank
You. That is beautiful. And it does, yes. But Yolanda's gonna wanna steal them, that's her favorite color.
I know, I thought about that, but it was the last bouquet they had like that, so.
Oh, I like that. And it's dianthus, dianthus mini, product, it's a number.
I am not an expert on flowers.
I'm not either, that's why I thought maybe you were.
No.
I know roses and hyacinths and,
I know roses and I know how to prune them. That's about the extent of my gardening ability.
I am not a gardener at all, not a gardener. Well, that is so sweet. I'll have to get with you and get an idea. Thank you.
We offered to take that to lunch. When you're up, take that to lunch.
Okay. I just don't drive, so I never, you know. I usually could probably come to town on Fridays.
Okay, Friday's usually a good day, no meetings.
Yeah, I know, and I usually come to town on Fridays and I'll go, like this week I've got a dental appointment for my teeth, you know.
Yeah, I mean, Russ had all these appointments last week, but he was not feeling well, so he ended up canceling all of them. They're gonna have to
Well, how is
reschedule.
he doing?
He's not doing well.
I am so sorry. Well, I felt it so sad. No.
I said it's the last one like this I had. Hopefully you're not going.
I'm not gonna stay.
That get real interesting, don't they?
Good. Good.
Kelly, get out of here.
Test, test.
Didn't get a chance to. For 2 months, I can survive anything for 2 months. But I'm not sure. Nice seeing you, John.
It's all these newbies are starting this elevating the dress code. So,
It's that side over there.
well, you look very professional and very well dressed, very well groomed. That's fine. Okay, I gotta do it. Hey, Matt. Oh, okay. Yeah, and it's request to publish, but yeah, if it comes up, and there's some other things too that I talked to Marcos about. Like the lawsuits that Furstenberg brought have been dismissed. That just happened last week. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what are you here for? For those franchises? Just okay. All right. Okay.
Check, 1, 2, check.
Hey, you look sharp, man.
Check, check.
Hear me? Test. Can you hear me?
Check, check.
All right, I think we should. Everybody ready? Call to order. Thank you all for coming. Nice to see you. We have, to get started, a Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilor Romero-Worth, salute to the flag by Councilor Ives, and an invocation comment led by Councilor Lindell. Shall we do that? All rise.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico and the Zeta symbol of perfect friendship amongst united cultures.
Thank you. If you'd just remain standing. And if you'd like to join in with me on the serenity prayer, I would ask you to do that. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thank you. Does anyone have any remembrances or special intentions that they would like us to acknowledge tonight? I do. Santa Fe lost a great friend a couple of nights ago, and that person is Ginny Sohn, who was the publisher of the New Mexican for many years, and a great friend to Santa Fe and many of us. Seeing Jenny in town or in a meeting was always a pleasure. She brought tremendous insight, lots of heart to everything that she did, and she's a gal that liked a really good laugh. So let's take a moment and remember Ginny and be thankful for the time that we had her on this earth plane. Chris? Councilor Rivera?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'd like to remember my dad. His birthday would have been on March 29th, and just acknowledge that my granddaughter was born on the same day. So,
Moment of silence, please. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. All right. Time to call the roll.
Mayor Weber,
Here.
Councilor Beta,
Here.
Councilor Harris, Councilor Ives,
Here.
Councilor Lindell. Here. Councilor Rivera,
here.
Councilor Romero Worth. Here. Councilor Vihel Coppler. And Councilor Villarreal.
She is in Chicago.
She's excused. Thank you.
She informed us at our last meeting that it was going to be the first time she would have missed a meeting because she is attending as part of a team representing the city an event in Chicago on neighborhoods and issues of neighborhood gentrification and displacement, and sends her regards. Item number 6, approval of the agenda. We have a motion.
Motion to approve.
And a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 7, approval of the consent calendar. Is there a motion on the consent calendar? Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to remove item 10C.
And C. Okay. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Yes, if we could pull item A, please.
Item A, okay. Yes.
And I'd like to pull, I guess it's all of these guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
So that's
From
item
G?
Yes.
Item G. Any other items?
Move for approval is amended.
Second?
Very good. And roll call vote, please.
Councilor Beta,
Yes.
Councilor Harris. Yes. Councilor Ives,
Yes.
Councilor Lindell,
Yes.
Councilor Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Councilor Vihel Coppler,
Yes.
and Mayor Weber.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion is approved.
Thank you. Approval of minutes or amendments there too? Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I have an amendment or a correction on page 8 of the minutes, wherein we discussed the Sam's Club request.
Yes.
And if you look at the vote, I voted in favor of this. And I believe, I'm conferring with my colleague here, I believe Councilor Abeta voted against. Is that correct?
Okay,
He
so
says that's correct.
we need to reverse those two votes.
For a minute there, I thought it passed.
No, I know it didn't. Okay, that's a very good correction. Thank you. Other corrections to the minutes? With the minutes as corrected, do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Okay.
And a voice vote. All in favor of the minutes as corrected, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. We have an opportunity for presentations now, and I recognize Councilor Rivera.
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me to do this. It's an honor to be doing this for you, Ms. Helberg. Muchísimas gracias from the City of Santa Fe and Mayor Alan Weber. This certificate is presented to Melissa Helberg. Thank you for your dedication and commitment to the city of Santa Fe. You have served the city with honor and dignity in various positions since 1985. Election consultant for every regular and special election the city has held for the last 33 years, member of the Ethics and Rules Committee, stenographer for various city committees for the last 18 years, and city council stenographer from 2007 through February 14th, 2018. The elected city officials, city employees, and members of the city committees have been privileged to have had the opportunity to collaborate with you in various roles. Your professionalism and expertise are greatly appreciated. Thank you for always performing your duties with a positive attitude and a smile. Signed by Mayor Ellen Weber. So just from me, just thank you for many years of experience. You've been great to have up here on City Council and the other committees that I've served with you on. And again, thank you to the mayor for allowing me to do this. So,
Thank you.
Would you like to say anything?
I would just like to say thank you. This is a great honor. I appreciate it very much. I wish you the very best, the newly elected officials and those who have just been elected, and I wish you wealth, I wish you health, I wish you golden store, I wish you heaven after death. What friend could wish you more? And thank you, Yolanda, for 33 years. Thank you.
And I'm sure the many elected officials that you've worked with would have loved to have been here and would have loved to have discussed it as well. But is there anyone from the body that would like to say anything? Councilor Ives?
Thank you, Councilor. What a delight it has been. I only wish that our paths had crossed much earlier in both our careers. I know you have decades of service to the people of the state of New Mexico in many positions, and I can only think that all of us as New Mexicans are better off for the work that you have done on all of our behalf. So what a joy. Thank you, and I hope to see you out dancing around town sometime soon.
Go, Peter.
I'll meet you.
Councilor Lindell?
Thank you. We started a very long time ago on a committee that doesn't even exist anymore. I think it was called the Rules and Ethics Committee.
It was, yeah, the Election Review Committee.
Long time ago.
Yes.
And every meeting's been a pleasure with you. And the gracious way that you have guided us and corrected us has been really, really appreciated. I mean, with many, many different committees, when we started to kind of get off track of what was really proper procedurally, you were always so gracious the way that you put us back on track. And the other thing is you always have great shoes.
Oh, thank you.
Only you would know.
Thank you for your service, and also thank you for your friendship.
Councilor Harris?
Thank you. You know, we don't quite have the history that Councilor Ives and Councilor Lindell have, or I don't have, with you. Only 2 years, but what a pleasure it's been over the last 2 years. And really what I wanted to say is kind of an extension of what Councilor Lindell just said. I don't know if you know, but we now have these laminated sheets to tell us what to do. And I think that's because, in large part, you're retiring. Because you would graciously correct us. Councilor Lindell is absolutely correct about that. And so I always appreciated what you brought to our meetings and just to our gatherings. So thank you once again. I wish you well and take care. Thank you.
Mayor?
I would simply like to say that while I didn't get to work with you, you are one of the few people, since I became mayor, about whom people have stopped me on the sidewalk and asked about and told me what a joy you were to work with. And then today I was told that the council was absolutely doing the right thing, and Councilor Rivera was doing the right thing and making sure you got the recognition you deserve. And so you have fans far and wide, way beyond this council, and your service is really not only recognized, but really appreciated by the entire city. So thank you.
Councilor Vigil Coppler.
Melissa, you and I go back way back in, I think in the early 80s when I worked here before, and
The master's program.
the master's program, and Melissa has always been just such a joy and so professional, and what a historical piece of knowledge we're going to have walking out the door. You've got so much history and background that it's unbelievable. And for those who don't know, Melissa has always been quite the party animal. She has been so fun, and we used to hang out together a little bit at some of the municipal league conferences, and I think you even attended some of the Association of Counties conferences as well. And I've always respected and admired you and considered you a good friend, and I wish you very well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. One more round of applause. Very good. We turn to the items removed from the consent calendar, I believe, at this point.
Yes, we're on item 10A.
10A, which, Councilor Harris, I believe you had something you wanted to call our attention to.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Klug. And so, a couple things. I wanted to acknowledge the changes that were requested of Mr. Klug having to do with the professional services agreement on termination. I know you got right on it and researched it. There was some kind of old PSAs around that kind of led us down the wrong path. So anyways, I appreciate that and a few other changes. But as much as anything, I wanted to mention in the next round of on-call services, I think you should look at, for instance, special inspection protocol. At Buckman Direct Diversion, we've got some work that involves steel fabrication and steel installations. And so I pointed out that they really need to look at Chapter 17 in that of UBC and the whole special inspections. So, I mean, that was just a recent example from late last week, but I think we're better served if we can look at geotechnical reports as well as special inspections when they're appropriate, and just those services that, for the most part, I think the owner is better served by bringing them to the projects. But anyways, thanks. I know that some departments are already looking at your list and thinking how they can put them to work, so I appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor. I'll move to approve.
Very good. Please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Councilor Harris?
Yes.
Councilor Ives?
Yes.
Councilor Lindell? Councilor Rivera? Yes. Councilor Romero Worth? Yes. Councilor Vigil Coppler?
Yes.
Councilor Beta?
Yes.
And Mayor Weber.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion has been approved.
We move now to item 10C, request for approval of a resolution requesting the city manager issue an RFP for an employee loan program to benefit the employees of the city of Santa Fe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. During the Public Works Committee meeting, I had some questions about how this would work with the RFP going out, and I believe most of my questions were answered, but I just wanted to go over them to make sure, since you're sitting right here.
And we have people who are even smarter than I am in the room, so we can tap their knowledge.
Okay, thank you. One of the questions that wasn't able to be answered that I asked was whether temporary employees would be eligible under this program.
Sorry, I looked green. Mayor Weber, Councilor Coppler, from my understanding, it's any employee. The only thing with temporaries is if they're not here for a year's term, then they wouldn't be eligible for that because they have to repay that loan within a year's time. Most of the temporaries are here for a year or less. So it kind of depends on the the status of that temporary.
I think in other jurisdictions where this has been applied, it does not, because of what you mentioned in terms of duration and other considerations, temporary employees would not be eligible.
Okay, and then another question I have is if during that period of time well, I guess it would depend on the term of the loan, but if it was due within the year and they were not able to pay it back, would the city participate in garnishments?
No. The way are you talking about people who are full-time city employees?
Or
we're
I guess either
excluding temporaries and saying it's for full-time city employees. If it's within the course of the year, the terms of the loan would be repayable, given the amount and so the circumstance would, as I understand it, not arise of not being able to pay it back. They're still using their salaries. They're still on salary. They are part of the city.
Okay, so in the event an employee fails to pay back, can the institution then come before the city to collect as a garnishment?
Mayor Weber, Councillor Koppler, from my understanding, no. There is no obligation to the city at all. This agreement is between the employee and the financial institution.
That's right.
All we're doing is doing an automatic withdrawal from their check for that institution.
Well, I do know that institutions from time to time, when loans are or not paid back or defaulted, right, the institution then goes to the employer to request garnishments through a court order. So I guess if the court ordered it, then the city would have to do it. Am I correct?
I am unsure of the answer to that question, only because I haven't spoken with this company directly. There is only one bank at this point that actually deals with these loans, and it's through a company called Prosperity Works. They go through TrueConnect, and then they deal with a fiduciary out of California.
Perhaps we have Ona Porter with us in the audience tonight. You want to say something, Gino? Mr. City Attorney?
Mayor, councilors, to answer Councilor Vigil Koppler's question directly, whether it's this loan program or any other lender in the community, it is theoretically possible that if a collection action is taken against an employee, that if the court issues a writ of garnishment to the city will need to comply, whether it's this lender or any other lender in the community.
Okay, and then I had other questions, and that is, assuming any financial institution applies, whether it be banks or credit unions, and you have some interest in that. I was told that there is a credit union, Guadalupe Credit Union is a participant in something like this. At any rate, if there are several who meet the RFP requirements, would it behoove us to have a selection and not just one institution, whereby maybe we could get a better interest rate for employees since there might be some healthy competition?
Mayor Weber, Councilor Koppler, we would go through the regular RFP process and solicit those bids, look at those bids, and if there is somebody that comes in at a lower interest rate, I'm assuming that we would look at that selection.
So am I hearing that maybe you will only select one institution? Or that's the aim?
For an RFP, that is the aim.
I guess I was looking for a little bit of healthy competition among institutions to better the interest rate for employees.
Well, they'll all, if they're interested, they will put in a bid to that RFP, but the process, once we look at those bids, then we will look at the questions, have them present to us, and go with the vendor that is the best.
Okay, and then I have one more question.
I think the city manager has a...
Mayor Weber, if I may interject, and Councilor, as part of the RFP process, I would envision, I've not seen the review criteria, but I would say that one of the review criteria most likely would be the interest rate that would be charged, and that would be, there would be a weighted percentage of that in the selection criteria, so that the the institution that we'd be selecting may not have the lowest interest rate when it's all said and done if there's 5 criteria, but it would be a part of the decision in the overall selection of the institution.
Okay, and then
So there would be competition, and that would go through our city RFP process with criteria. Criteria would, or evaluation criteria would be based on the interest rate as well.
Okay, and then I recall having been told at, I believe at our Public Works Committee meeting, that there was a cap interest rate intended in the RFP, somewhere around 24 or 25%. Is that right?
The interest rate that is currently with this program is 24.9% with a maximum loan of $3,500 for 1 year.
Seems rather high, but.
Well, what they're trying to do, I believe, is get away from the payday loan companies and give the opportunity to employees to get a loan less than what the payday loan companies offer at 175%. Something like that.
That's exactly right. I think the intent of the program as it's implemented in other communities and would be here is that we are working with our employees on their behalf in this case to give them an opportunity if they are in a financial distress to avoid having to go out into the market where the payday lending and other companies offer them loans that are regulated by the state and capped at 175%. So, and these are small, typically very small amounts of money that are being asked for to tide people over from very immediate short-term needs, and as a consequence, frankly, there's not a great deal of money to be made in this market, which is why asking, I think your instinct to see if there's competition is a good one, but I think the practical reality is this is not a market that a lot of banks want to try to make, or other institutions want to be participating in. We're hoping we will be able to work with the one that is so far, or others that will come forward, but we know of one that has so far made the program available in other communities around New Mexico.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Councilor Romero Worth.
Okay, so I have a couple questions. So let me understand this. So the interest rate would be 24.9% for a maximum of $3,500 for 1 year.
$3,000.
I mean, $3,500.
For $3,000, up to a $3,000 loan.
$3,000, not $3,500. Okay.
Yes. If I misspoke, I correct myself.
And so why is the interest rate still so high when you've got a relatively small loan amount, you've got a fixed period of time, and you're connected to people's paychecks who work for the city and generally have stable employment? Why is that interest rate still so high given those circumstances?
Mayor Weber, Councilor Worth, from my understanding, this program doesn't look at credit checks, does not conduct credit checks. They also offer 6 free credit counseling services annually. So it's more of a matter of getting people financially stable. Yes, I understand that the interest rate is high, but it's for some people that cannot go to a financial institution and go in for a loan because of either bad credit, no credit, something like that. So this is trying again to get away from the payday loan companies that are very high percentage, and giving them something in between that in case they need it as an emergency, it's there for them at a more reasonable rate than the payday loan companies.
And so I was sent an article from the LA Times titled "Offer Payday Loans as an Employee Benefit," this startup says. You can find it at the LA Times, I'm sure, if you just Google payday loans. And they suggest that with TrueConnect, you apply online and your loan application is acted on almost instantly, and there is very little background check as to what other debt you have, and whether you have terrible credit or not. Do you see that as an issue? If I would hate to make a program available that contributes to, I don't know, a bigger spiral of debt?
Mayor Weber, Councilor Worth, I agree to a certain point. I don't want the employees to get into this kind of spiral in the financial world, but I think this is available to them in case of extreme emergencies. I do understand that TrueConnect does not do a heavy-duty background check or credit check like I stated before. When I was looking into this as well, usually you can get your funds within 24 hours. So it's a very quick turnaround. But what was presented to me as part of this was like a single mom needing to repair 4 tires all of a sudden and doesn't have that money in the savings, can't go and get something from another financial institution, but this would be available to get her to where she needs to be.
Right. And I understand, you know, the idea that we want to get people away from payday loans, and that, you know, sometimes there are emergencies and there's no other place to go, and, you know, 4 tires on your car is really important, you know, gets you to work, gets your kids to school, that kind of stuff. I just want to be sure that that we're not doing something here that, you know, it seems like a no-brainer. It seems like, you know, it's all peaches and cream, but I just want to make sure that we're also asking the hard questions to make sure that we're giving our blessing to something that isn't going to make matters worse for people who are really, you know, financially.
And I think with the
struggling,
the financial counseling services that are provided and the amount of only at $3,000, not to exceed that, will help in that, because that was one of the questions that I had as well. There are a lot of employees that go paycheck to paycheck. And so that was one of the first questions I asked as well, is what do we do in that case? We don't want them to get overwhelmed with debt. So it's a matter of getting them financially sound with the counseling, making sure that we get them to the right place as far as savings accounts, with the financial advisors, making sure that they stay on track and not to exceed that amount. So it's a good thing that there's a cap on it.
And so in your research, did you also look at the need for this service in our city? I mean, did you survey city employees to find out if this is something that they want, that they take advantage of, that they're looking for?
Councilor Worth, no, I did not. But what I did look at was the statistics that came with this program. Right now, they're serving in 2 different communities within our state, one being Doña Ana County, and they've been doing this since February. They have 125 loans that they have now given out to employees. The town of Bernalillo, they started in April, and they have 8 loans. So it kind of depends on, I guess, the situation or the area, but it goes from anywhere between 8 loans and 125 loans in a couple months' time. So I believe that with that, there is a small need for it.
And when the RFP, you go through the RFP process, will we approve the RFP?
Yes, ma'am, it will come back.
Okay. So there'll be another opportunity to ask questions about the RFP itself and the program that the awardee is putting forth?
City Manager.
Mayor and Councilor Romero Worth, is not typically, the RFP itself is not typically brought before council prior to release. Typical situation is the award or the recommendation for award will be brought before council for the ultimate approval. In this case, and we've had other cases where we brought the RFP before council to review the scope, and the review criteria, I think, were the primary areas, the scope of work as well as the review criteria. So that could be done in this case if council as a whole wished to do that. But typically, you'll approve a contract based on an RFP that you have not necessarily seen the details of the scope and the review criteria.
Okay, I guess I want to make sure that, you know, it sounds almost too good to be true, and when it sounds almost too good to be true, you probably should be asking questions.
I think that's fair. And I wonder if Ona Porter is here from Prosperity Works, and she is the person who has worked with other jurisdictions on this program. If you have specific questions, and if you don't mind answering some of them, this would be a good time to clarify some of the practices and the back experiences that you've had in terms of need, limits, and so on. So if you would be willing to answer a few questions, I think it'd be very helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councilors. With respect to the surveying of employees, we've done a broad survey and understand that within the year period from the time the survey was done, 20% of public employees across the state had used a storefront product. And at that point, the average was 350%. So there are a couple of other things. First of all, with TrueConnect, there is no credit check. So what we're doing is giving people the opportunity who have poor or low or no credit history to participate in the financial system. Now, one of the other things that your staff member did not mention is that every time there's a payroll deduction to repay this loan, which is amortized over 1 year period, positive credit is reporting. So we're putting them in a better position financially than they were when they began this process. Also, interestingly, we have the data. There have been, in the first year, in 4 jurisdictions. We now are in 13 jurisdictions in New Mexico, and the city of Albuquerque and the city of Bernalillo are launching on May 1st. We've had almost 3,000 loans, and that has been to about $750,000. Now, if you looked at that $750,000 at 24.9%, and I'm sure none of us in this room would pay 24.9%, but you compared that to now, the current cap of 175%, you can see the savings, and it is enormous. And an example of the difference, if you took out a $1,000 title loan, in which case you have to own your car and turn over a title and also put a tracking device on your car so they can turn it off if you don't pay that payment. That $1,000 loan at the end of 1 year would cost $3,000, and there's no guarantee that that loan would be paid off because those are structured as interest-only loans. That same loan, $1,000 with TrueConnect, would be $157, the cost of that in 1 year, $157 on $1,000. So it is something that really stabilizes employees. The number one reason that employees take out these loans is to pay off high-cost loans that they already have in the industry. Number 2 is for a car repair. Number 3 is for health costs that is not compensated or covered in their policies, or if they don't have a policy. And the 4th reason is a home repair.
I should point out you are not speaking for TrueConnect.
I am not. We've been working on predatory lending in our state for almost 10 years. And we finally took a cold shower and got to 175%. And we called that progress, not victory. And that was really because, here's the progress. This gives you an idea of the size of the problem. New Mexicans at 175% will save $500 million over the next 2 years. In addition to that, 57 of the licensees have left the state, and we expect at the next licensing period, we will be down from the high of 700 to about 400. So it's progress, we're not done. But what Prosperity Works does is to remove barriers to financial security. We work on financial inclusion and opportunity for our clients. Remove barriers and create opportunities. So TrueConnect was one of those that we found that had a great track record across the nation, less than a 1% default rate. And so that's one that we brought. The other one is called Opportune. It's a storefront. It is in Rio Rancho and also in Albuquerque. We had the grand opening about 6 weeks ago. Their goal is to help people build a credit history who don't currently have one. And anyone can apply online for that across the state. And the reason for bringing them in, not all employers will adopt this, and so not all employees will have the option, and even if they did, not everybody's employed who might need a loan.
Thank you. Councilor Ives?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support putting the program in place, especially when I read in the resolution that this is free for the city of Santa Fe, so it really doesn't cost the city anything and could be a benefit to our employees. What has disturbed me, well, just also by way of background, having previously sponsored measures to urge the legislature to cut the interest rates that were capable of being charged. I fully support what's being done here, because that type of predatory lending, I think, has no place, certainly in our town and certainly across our country. That said, what's I've found a little disturbing in this process is we have a measure to put out an RFP, which has absolutely no terms, no guides, no sense of any boundaries, and yet at Public Works earlier this week, as has been discussed, and here we've talked about a cap at 24.9%, we've talked about a maximum amount of $3,000, and I realize this is just the True Connect terms, but it's being bandied about in our various meetings as if this was to some degree a foregone conclusion.
I understand.
And we also learned that it will be limited to 8% of the employee's paycheck, and of course a one-year payback. And I'm just frustrated, having only heard by virtue of responses to questions all these specifics. So I actually would be interested in looking at this RFP, because I don't know what's going to be in it. I mean, if it is an open RFP that says we'd like to have this type of program with some very broad statement of guidelines, you know, loans, please tell us what your maximum amount would be. We would anticipate a year back, or if you propose a longer payback, let's hear what that is. Because I think it is important to provide the opportunity to compete to other local institutions who are based in our city who might well want to participate in this program and be able to make those types of loans available to full-time city employees. And, you know, from the lender's perspective, of course, this is all a matter of risk assessment. And if you've got somebody who's employed full-time at the city of Santa Fe with a limited amount of money, with taking it out of a paycheck on a regularly basis so it's paid back within a year, you reduce those risks significantly, which is, you know, why it makes sense, I think, for the lenders. But I'd love to see it be an open competition to see if anybody local wants to participate. No offense to True Connect or Opportune or anybody else who's in here, because God bless you for being in here and providing these types of loans to people in need. So that's my 2 cents worth on what I hope is in this RFP as it goes forward, so that it can be competitive and is not a foregone conclusion.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor. And one of the things about that is that is really key is there is no credit check on the True Connect loan. So it is serving a very distinct population. And so there would be people who would want to participate, but they're going to do a credit check, and so the people we're trying to serve are the ones who are not going to be able to be served.
Well, and again, I can only say that in the measure that we have before us, there is no reference to, if I remember correctly, whether or not credit checks would be performed or not. Okay. So, again, there's just so much more thinking that has gone on to this, which hasn't been part of our package, that it's frustrating to me. So,
Councilor Rivera.
I understand.
Thank you, Mayor. Lynette, can I ask you a question? It's back to the garnished wages, because when we talked about it at finance, if I'm an employee and I apply for this program and get a loan, it'll work with the city so that it's paid off within a year and the payment comes out of my check automatically. If I decide to leave the city, then that ceases, and the employee who is no longer an employee is on the hook for the loan on their own. So really no need to garnish wages.
And there's no way to. They've separated their employment.
Right. Just wanted to clarify that. The other thing, Lynette, is we talked about emergency or people with emergencies being able to apply for this. Would the transfer of a high-interest loan be considered an emergent situation? That they could then pay off that loan, which would probably take 5 years, and at least get it paid off with this program?
Mayor, Weber and Councilor Rivera, from what Ms. Porter is saying, yes. That's one of the 4 reasons that people actually take out these loans.
Okay, thank you. And I agree with my fellow councilors that an open RFP would probably be best so that we get as much competition as possible. And maybe we put a ceiling on the interest rate, but that's it, and then let them be as competitive as possible for the lowest interest rate. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Counselor?
I agree with Councilor Ives that I would like to see an RFP before it goes out. But my other question is, because this is a very limited, it seems like a maybe very limited interest in an RFP such as this, when you advertise this, will you be sending packets to the financial institutions, notifying them, or letters of interest, or something like that? How will we get the word out once the RFP's fully vetted?
Mayor and Councilor Vihil-Coppler, I have not sat with staff and worked out a detailed process on this. I was waiting for it to get through the council process first. But I would imagine that we would do our best to get the word out, go to local institutions and speak with them, as well as the entities that have participated in the past and let them know what our goals are. To Councilor Ives' point, I would expect the RFP to kind of set the framework for what we're looking for in the scope, as well as kind of set some guidelines and not, say we're looking for your return or your payback. We're looking for a cap of whatever the cap is, and set out some criteria, and have the institutions reply based on that. But we would definitely have to do some due diligence to get the information out to various institutions locally and presumably nationally.
I asked the question because I know there are many credit unions in the city as well as the state who offer similar services like this, maybe not couched in a municipality, but I believe that credit unions offer a great deal of service to people who are in need, and it would be unfortunate if they didn't get the message that this RFP is out for bid. So I would like to see it, at least some kind of invitation to apply or letter of interest or whatever you do in the RFP world to get the word out. I would be very interested in doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Councilor Ives.
I just wanted to say thank you to Prosperity Works for the work you're doing in this area. As you point out, the financial impact on generally those people least able to afford these types of loans is significant. And so the opportunity to ensure that what I would frankly call unconscientiable interest rates and the gouging that goes on, to be able to eliminate that, God bless you for that work. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for the councilor and the mayor's information, Guadalupe Credit Union does have a participation agreement with True Connect and Sunrise Bank. So they are a CDFI, and they have some money that is directed specifically to low-income consumers, and they're using that to fund New Mexico loans.
Thank you. Councilor Rivera.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move for approval with direction that the RFP come back to the governing body prior to being issued.
Second.
Very good. Can we call, or is there anybody want to comment on the motion at this point? Can we call the roll then?
Sure. Councilor Ives?
Yes.
Councilor Lindell?
Yes, and would you put me on as a co-sponsor?
You bet.
Thank you.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes, and added me as a co-sponsor.
Councilor Romero Worth? Councilor Vihil-Coppler?
Yes.
Councilor Abeyta?
Yes.
Councilor Harris? And Mayor Weber?
Yes, and thank you for those comments and for your participation. We move to item 10G, and Councilor Romero Worth.
So after I pulled these, it was pointed out to me that this is request for approval to publish notice of a public hearing. So maybe as a new counselor, somebody can help me understand the process here. what's the trail that these 5 resolution or ordinances, what's their path? How does this work?
Mayor and Councilor Romero Worth, so these were introduced, I don't have the exact dates, but these were introduced at council, and then the process is to go through a committee process to get them to this point where it's a request to publish for a public hearing. There's a certain time period after that between now, the request to publish, and the actual public hearing. There's a number of days, I don't know that off the top of my head, but what it is essentially about a month. That's why, since it's April 11th, these are requested to publish for a public hearing on May 9th. Typically, it's 2 meetings, it's a full month, 2 meetings away is when we have the public hearing. So this is a request to publish, and so as the bills are put in here, it's how they will be advertised for the public hearing 2 meetings from now. These are ordinance amendments, so ultimately changing the code. The other option is a resolution, which has a shorter time period, does not change the code. A resolution would typically, you're going to see on your agenda this evening, I believe, some resolutions being introduced, and they will hit a committee process, whether it be Public Utilities, Finance Committee, and then come back to council for a discussion on the afternoon agenda. Public hearings are held in the evening agenda. So this will be on May 9th during the 7 o'clock session is the next time you would see these bills if you were to approve them this evening as a request to publish.
And so they don't go to committee then? They just go to public hearing? Or will they go to committee in between now and the public hearing?
Mayor Weber and Councilor Romero Worth. So far to date, it's already gone through a Public Works Committee, where it passed unanimously. It went through the Economic Development and Advisory Committee today, also passed unanimously. So after this, it'll go to Finance Committee and then appear on May 9th for full City Council and public comment. So there'll be other times for comment and engagement and conversation. And I offer to all city councilors, if you would like to have an offline, in-depth conversation, we're happy to do that as well.
Okay, great.
Any other comments or questions? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you very much. Could we call the roll on that?
Yes, sir. Councilor Lindell? Councilor Rivera? Councilor Romero Worth?
Yes.
Councilor Vihil Coppler?
Yes.
Councilor Beta?
Yes.
Councilor Harris? Councilor Ives?
Yes.
Mayor Weber?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion is approved.
Thank you very much. We move to item number 11, an amendment to an agreement with our city manager to extend a 60-day contract. And I can speak to this if you would like. It's fairly straightforward. As you know, at the city manager's contract was extended by virtue of this prior council in light of the election and some time to make a transition. In the interim, a couple of things have happened. One is we have had the budget director, our finance director, has taken another job, and we wish him well. And we have budget sessions starting on the 23rd of this month. If we don't extend our our city manager's contract for the next 60 days, I think we will be flying with a little bit of uncertain wings through the budget process. At the same time, I've initiated a process to review the employment of all of our top managers and to ask them to reapply and to see what they would like to see in terms of their futures. We have a unique situation with city government in Santa Fe in that there really isn't a transition between the election and the new governing body taking office. And as a consequence, the transition is part of governing in my case. And so I regard this as a good government measure. Same applies to item number 12, quite frankly, that we need to maintain continuity. We need to maintain the professional experience and knowledge of our current office holders or managers, and allow us to go through an orderly process of transition without going through something as sensitive and significant to the city as a budget process without leadership from our city manager. The options which I've explored simply don't make a lot of sense to me. We could not renew this Brian Snyder professional agreement, professional service contract, in which case we would probably be faced with having to appoint a temporary or an interim city manager, and then still go through the transition process, at the end of which we might very well end up with yet another city manager. So in the course of 3 months we would have had, or 2 months, we would have had 3 different city managers. So I'm simply trying to provide some transitional stability to how we do business, particularly in this sensitive period of time as we need to authorize a budget and get it into the hands of the state. So that's the logic behind it. I think it's fairly straightforward, but I understand. I'm sure both the city manager and I would be happy to answer questions or take comments if anybody has them. Yes, Councilor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm sure that all of us have given this a lot of thought. I know I have. And part of what I think about is just, the changes in our charter and this particular situation and what it means. And so we know that up until the recent changes, and that gets bundled into this whole strong mayor notion, the council was to provide approval to the city manager and city attorney. The way it reads now, we're to provide consent. And so how do you, when you look at your role and your responsibilities under the charter as it states now, how do you view this situation? Is this something that is in line with your responsibilities and your powers?
Well, we may want to refer to our both our city clerk and our interim city attorney, but I would say yes, sir. What we have is a situation where my responsibility as the mayor is to bring to you names of people for you to vote on, and to say that this is a person you would approve for that position for this period of time. And so it is I'm bringing you in my job as the mayor. There are 3 slots or 3 positions that I am supposed to be accountable for. This is one of them. We approved our interim city attorney much the same way in the last council hearing.
Right, and so how do you see our responsibility under the charter language that says consent instead of approve?
Well, can we get some guidance on what the language change means, Mr. Interim City Attorney?
Mayor, Councilor Harris, I'm jumping over to that spot right now. And it may in kind be a bit of a distinction without a difference, because consent is exactly that. Going through a vote in which the governing body says we consent to the appointment of this individual. Withholding the consent on the appointment withholds the appointment of the individual. So whether it's approval by a majority vote or consent by a majority vote, what it may do is, what the intention may have been, is to make it more consistent with other instances where we're used to this language, such as presidential appointments that require the consent of the U.S. Senate, or I had a second example on consent, and the governor's appointments, cabinet secretaries, require the consent of the state Senate. So it may have just been to align the language with other instances in government, but the practical effect is the same.
Right. As a practical matter, it's the same process, essentially. A motion, a second, and then a vote.
To consent.
To consent. That's my initial question. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. I don't know, Councilor Romero, you were on the committee that in part was drafting that language. It's like having one of the founding fathers or mothers at the table. Was there a distinction that you particularly had in mind that you recall? Were there
Yes,
Federalist Papers that we need to refer to in this situation?
I think the way the interim city attorney, Mr. Zamora, has outlined it is exactly what we were thinking, is that we were, exactly the two examples that he gave. At the federal level, the U.S. Senate consents to federal appointments of some nature, and at the state level, governors appoint cabinet secretaries and others, and the Senate consents with the advice and consent of the Senate in either of those levels of government. So that's exactly
Thank you.
What we were thinking.
Thank you. Councilor Rivera.
Mr. Zamora, on regarding what you just said, so right now we're working with the city manager. We've always approved the contract, which included salary, some other things on it. With the new charter, that doesn't happen. We don't have a contract. We don't approve a salary. All we do is approve the consent of the position or the person in the position.
Mayor and Councilor Rivera, again, the language was quite similar. The practice in the past, having been subjected to that process under the old charter, was that a contract be awarded, which is pretty much standard in the industry, to get someone to take a high-level position like a city manager role, city attorney role, or a city clerk role, to be able to recruit and retain high-level management required a contract, and seems to be the industry standard throughout New Mexico and all municipalities. So with the appointment and with bringing this forward has been the practice of stating, I'm appointing this individual, these are the terms of employment, this is the contract. It seems to be the practice and the tradition in Santa Fe. Without getting too controversial, I'm not necessarily sure that it's required for you to approve the contract terms. However, that has been the tradition thus far in city. And I don't see anything in the charter, past or present, that required council to approve the exact terms of this. However, the tradition has been when you name an appointment, these are the terms that I'm naming this appointment.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Yes, sir. Councilor Ives.
And I would simply note, as a governing body, we still have the responsibility of approving the budget, and part of that budget are the salaries for all those positions. So I think we do have impact there and opportunities if there are objections to be heard on those points, hopefully none.
Mr. City Attorney.
Mayor and Councilor Rivera, to supplement the answer that I provided before, to take it down one level beyond consent, it's the council that has the authority to approve contracts over a certain amount, and typically these contracts that are being entered into exceed the administrative authority and therefore require council approval, and so that's why it's before you.
Very good, thank you.
Yes, Councilor Lindell.
I'm going to make a motion to approve.
Second.
To consent.
Can we call the roll?
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Romero Worth? Councilor Vigil Koppler?
Yes.
Councilor Abeyta?
Yes.
Councilor Harris?
Yes.
Councilor Ives?
Yes.
Councilor Lindell?
Yes.
and Mayor Weber.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion is approved.
Thank you. Similar considerations involved with item number 12, which extends the city clerk as well. And it is, I think, under very similar circumstances. We're dealing with the transition process, and we do not want to see a vacancy while we're going through this process. It's pretty straightforward in terms of the logic and the rationale. So and I'm sure, Councilor Harris, the same factors apply here. Councilor Ives.
I would cut to the chase and move to approve.
Very good. I would ask for the clerk to call the roll.
You bet. Councilor Romero Worth? Yes. Councilor Vihil Coppler?
Yes.
Councilor Abeyta?
Yes.
Councilor Harris? Councilor Ives?
Yes.
Councilor Lindell? Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
And Mayor Weber.
Yes, and thank you.
Motion is approved.
Matters from the city manager.
Mayor, I have none.
And matters from the city attorney.
Mayor, council, I have none.
And matters from the city clerk.
We'll keep it going. I have none either. Thank you.
Good. Communications from the governing body. Yes, Councilor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to start by noting I'm introducing a resolution supporting the AOPA fly-in event at the Santa Fe Regional Airport on September 14th, 2018. I'm also introducing a resolution supporting the 7th annual Neighbor to Neighbor Food Drive, authorizing the use of city vehicles and manpower to assist with the collection of donations. I'd also would ask the city manager to, Ordinance 2015-06 talks about our youth leagues and the waiving of various fees for, there's actually two groupings. There's a long list of our parks. For instance, Franklin Miles is the one that really sticks out, for Little League. So the ordinance says, and then it also deals with MRC and soccer, and breaks it out separately. But the ordinance says that in lieu of payment of those fees, that they will generate a lot of volunteers for the Great American Spring Cleanup, Great American Cleanup, as well as keep Santa Fe beautiful. Now we're 3 years on. I'd be curious how well various leagues are performing in that, but they should be reminded that it's coming up next weekend, and they need to pitch in. That's their requirement by ordinance. Okay? Next thing for me is, this really has to do with, I was reminded of this at Public Works earlier in the week when we had a discussion about the loan program, and as Councilor Vihil Coppler was thinking it through, I mentioned that we did ask to review the RFP, and I'm glad to see we're going to do that. But it reminded me that under Ordinance 2017-17, which has to do with the Traffic Operations Program, and as everybody remembers who was here, that's cameras and speed devices, CSDs is the acronym that's used in the ordinance. Speed vans is another one. So that ordinance was signed off, I don't know, maybe a year ago almost. So if you would check on the status with Chief Padilla, I think I was a real advocate for that. It was a very long and it was a good discussion, and got to a point where I think most everybody supported it, but I don't think it was unanimous. I don't remember exactly. But at any rate, it passed. And it's a year on, and I would like to know what's being done. I'd like to know that it's about to be implemented. But we approved the RFP. There was a lot of attention paid to it. So the last one for me has to do with long-range planning. I hear through the grapevine that our long-range planner, Mr. Liming, has retired. And I've also heard that he left behind some recommendations about how to modify the general plan, which he'd been working on for years. And so I was disappointed that he moved on without relaying those. And I'd like to know if those recommendations are there, and will Mr. McPherson follow up on that, or kind of what's the status on long-range planning, specifically as it relates to the general plan? So that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good, Councilor. Councilor Ives?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to step back and just also join as a co-sponsor of the resolution regarding RFP for the employee loan program. I would join as a co-sponsor on both of Councilor Harris's resolutions introduced this evening. I would also introduce two resolutions, and Councilor Lindell has joined as co-sponsor on these, which we have been working on them together, and similarly talking to the folks who in the community who are interested in these. One is a resolution in support of condemning coyote killing contests and urging the New Mexico legislature to pass legislation prohibiting such contests for the purpose of killing coyotes for prizes or entertainment. The second is a resolution supporting the elimination of the use of plastic drinking straws in the city of Santa Fe. And then, because I am in a joining kind of mood, would join in the matter to be introduced by Councilor Lindell, as well as the two that are to be introduced by Councilor Rivera. That's all I have.
Thank you very much.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, one just last question. Will you be addressing this at all? This is what you had issued. I just wanted to say thanks for doing that, and I'm happy to wait until you have the opportunity to speak about it.
You know, I thank you for the question. Yes, it is your turn, Councilor Lindell.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a resolution expressing support for the Santa Fe Civic Housing Authority's application for affordable housing program funds from the Federal Home Loan Bank for the renovation of its Villa Consuelo property. Ms. Vigil, I have numerous co-sponsor requests, and I'll just hand those to you in paper form. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
You are welcome, and thank you. Councilor Rivera.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a resolution proclaiming severe or extreme drought conditions may exist in the city of Santa Fe, imposing fire restrictions, restricting the sale or use of fireworks within the city of Santa Fe, and prohibiting other fire hazard activities. Unfortunately, state law requires us to renew this every 30 days, so new councilors, you'll be seeing this quite a bit in the next couple months. Also, I'll be supporting or sponsoring a resolution requesting the mayor, city manager to create a task force reinforcing a safe bicycle and pedestrian-friendly community, looking into immediate changes that strengthen the commitment and identification of long-term safety changes and potential law changes that can improve safety for all pedestrians and bicyclists in the city. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Councilor Romero-Worth, not having seen anything on here that was a resolution, I actually blundered and didn't recognize you, so apologies.
No blunder. A couple things. So I wanted to let everybody know that the North Central Regional Transit District is in the process of getting rid of some buses that are no longer of use to them because they are either too old or have too many miles on them. And they are, looking to sell them. And I just want to let, the city know that, and also nonprofits in the area, because I think they are eligible to purchase them, and that might be something people are interested in. So just put everyone on notice that that's available. I, too, am curious about this. Are you, how are you? Are you going to make a comment?
I had not intended to. I thought as a document it would stand for itself. If you'd like to, I think we can chat about it, in a way that makes sense. But no, I hadn't intended to use this forum as a place to take further time to talk about it.
I kind of feel like we need to say a few things. So but I want to do it in a way that you're
comfortable.
Yeah. So the memo I'm holding up is the mayor's report on modernization and temporary raises, which has been in the paper, and I just feel like I'm glad, we were handed this memo right before the meeting, so I've had a quick glance at it. I think that I'm glad that you put the memo together and had the meetings that you did to better understand the nature of those raises and how they came to be. I think it's important that we review that process, and I guess I want to state that the Enterprise Resource Planning and Land Use Modernization Project is an enormously important one, and that I support it, and I think it's important for our community to know. I think Deputy City Manager Martinez was here at our last meeting and helped us to understand that this system will help address at least 84 recommendations that were made in the McCard report, which is the audit that the city did that exposed some practices that are demonstrate that our city systems are outdated and need to be updated. So I just want to say, one, I completely support this work. It's very important. I do also want to say that the timing and the process by which those raises occurred is troubling, and I'm glad to have this memo from you talking about how all of that came to be. And I think for the most part it answers a lot of the questions that I was going to raise tonight about that process and trying to understand the perspectives that from the people who were responsible for these raises. So I just want to, I guess, mark in time that this is something that we need to pay attention to because the perception is problematic, and we need to really be on top of this. So, thank you.
You want to go around and come back, or would you rather jump in right now, Councilor?
I'd rather just jump in on this particular point because I truly appreciate the effort and the time spent in putting together this discussion with regards to these particular raises. It does point out some of the standardized industry practices which have been utilized in other jurisdictions to incentivize a bureaucracy that otherwise is slow to change and hard to move. So I very much appreciate knowing this because it brings it comforts my heart much to know the rationale behind it. And as people on this body who I have served with over time know, that our computing systems have been near and dear to my heart. And whatever gets us to the point where we have put in place our new enterprise-wide system, I think is critical. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Councilor. I don't want to derail the normal order of business. We can certainly take up that memo that I put together and release the report that came out, but there are other items that you may want to address, Councilor Abeyta, and have the other resolutions and issues that are in front of us also need to be addressed too. So I leave it to you. It's your turn.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I'm grateful that you did the debrief with the staff. I myself spoke with the deputy manager as the chair of the finance committee, because one of my concerns was every time something comes before the finance committee with a contingency fund, do we have to ask the question, are there going to be temporary raises involved in this? I think it showed, though, I think it showed poor judgment on the part of management. due to the timing with an election being there, and not at least advising the council that there's $400,000 worth of temporary increases in here. At the same time, having been in their seat, with the project so critical like this, sometimes you do have to ask yourself, you know, what will it slow down the project? The project is very important. If we take it to the council, who knows what we'll land up with as a finished product, because then we'll get 8 or 9 different opinions. It is what it is. I think, like I said, it could have been handled differently, but it's also a lesson to be learned, and maybe there are changes we need to make to our HR handbook regarding authority of the manager, especially now that we have a manager and a strong mayor, and maybe had the manager had that kind of guidance, because I don't believe he did, maybe the decision would have been differently. So like I said, we need to put it behind us. Thank you, Mayor, for giving us this report, and hopefully it's something we can learn from, not just for this administration, but administrations on down the line. And if that's in the form, like I said, of amending our HR rules and regulations so that administrators have more guidance in the future, then that's what we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor, your turn.
Thank you. So I will deal with the comments on this subject and then the other matters.
Very good.
So I will say that I was very disheartened to learn about what transpired, and I will say that at the last meeting where we had the presentation about the modernization of our systems, I was very excited about what was happening. I do remember asking, and it is in the minutes, and being very concerned about employees who were going to be put upon to work the extra hours and do the extra duties, and asked staff very pointedly, let's not forget to keep them in on the fold, because this is going to be a great amount of work on them. And I'm kind of paraphrasing, but it's in the minutes. And it was at that point, and in retrospect, yes, it was at that point that I believe staff could have said, oh, and by the way, we did compensate them for the extra work they're doing, and that may have put this all to bed. It could have been expressed at that time, because at the time I was concerned with employee morale, and had I known the raises were being given, I would have felt a lot better, and maybe wouldn't have had the distrust that I have now. I believe the lack of communication to this governing board by staff at that point is disingenuous, and I will be on the lookout in the future to overturn every stone. I mean, this is kind of my bailiwick in the past, and having been HR director here, and I have many concerns, and I thank you for your report. I appreciate it very much. You're a mayor and a man of get on it and get it investigated, and I appreciate that very much. My concerns are, what do the personnel rules say about this? Were they violated? What made the difference, and I know there was a slight explanation, but for me it was not quite on point, between 10% and 15%. Why not 5%? Why are we setting precedent for the future? And maybe this was precedent from the past that we don't know about, and that may have made it okay. What has happened in the past? I am on the Utilities Committee, and I recall we just recently talked about systems implementation there with our collections and the like, and the amount of work that employees are seeing in that regard. And I wondered, did any of them get additional money for extra hours that they are working? And they have had tremendous results. We went from a horrible customer service to wonderful customer service in our water bills and their accuracy and answering the phone out there. It's just been completely improved. So I do have concerns. And then the other thing is, I do believe, we have, in the short tenure I've been here, less than $400 has come before us for approval. And I just can't believe that $400,000 didn't come to the governing board before us. And if it did, then somebody's not talking. So a temporary increase such as this does affect PERA and payment and accrual of such. And unless the rules have changed, so the city is going to pay a little bit more into employees' PERA for this. And then when it's taken away, then of course their PERA will probably go down, unless the rules have changed. I could be wrong, I could be corrected. I'm concerned for the future of how we do things. I'm concerned for employee morale. And while I do love this project and it's something we really need, and I very much appreciate your getting on top of this, I have to say that right now, I really don't trust a lot, and I will probably be asking more questions than anybody wants to hear. Thank you, and I'll move on to the next things. I would like to say that the Bicycle and Trails Advisory Board is going to be looking for members, so if anybody, I just want to put it out there, anybody wants to serve on this board, we have some termed out board members that are coming up. And then I would like to join in sponsoring Councillor Harris's resolution supporting the AOPA fly-in event. I'm very interested in the airport and what we do there. I would like to join in Councillor Peter Ives' resolution condemning coyote killing. And I would like to join in Councillor Lindell's resolution expressing support for Santa Fe Civic Housing Authority's Affordable Housing Program funds. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to first take care of a small item of business that's on the sheet here. We've had a number of comments come my way about how we could streamline our hearings on alcohol licenses, and so I've taken the step of introducing an ordinance that would put that into the hands of a hearing officer rather than having us, in every case, deal with those alcohol licenses, and it's just trying to clean up the docket. So that's something I've introduced, and it will be referred to all the committees, and we'll see how you feel about it. I had not actually intended to talk about that report because I thought it would speak for itself, but I'm happy to discuss it because I think it is an important item for our community, for our city employees, for the governing body, for the people who have been working hard to implement the absolutely essential software upgrade. There is no doubt, as I said in the report, that this one decision to temporarily increase the salaries of some city employees managed to touch every nerve of every person who could possibly be upset about it. And it is absolutely clear that was not the intent. That was not anybody's purpose. I think having spent a significant amount of time sitting down with the management team and then reading through the documentation that is the background to the entire project, it's clear to me that what Councilor Abeyta said is correct, that this is a very complicated project. The history of the city in implementing projects like this is not good, either in terms of picking the right software or having it implemented on time and on budget. And so my feeling, my conviction is that the people in charge of the project were keeping the budget and the calendar foremost in mind, and that was what was driving their decision-making process to get the upgrade implemented so that we could be the beneficiaries of it. Let's not lose sight of what Councilor Romero-Worth said in her initial comment. We received a report, the McHard report, that laid bare the deficiencies in the way the city has been doing business for a long, long time. We have left our city employees to work with systems that are either ill-fitting or obsolete or non-existent. And so if we're really concerned about city morale and the capacity of our hardworking employees to do their jobs and to meet my request that we be the most user-friendly city in the country, we have to equip them with the tools they need to do the job. And those tools in the 21st century are information technology tools, and they haven't had them. So not to lose sight of the real point of this exercise, the real point is to modernize city government in Santa Fe for the benefit of the people who live here and for the benefit of the people who work in the government. And that's why this project is so fundamental and essential. It is literally a mission-critical project. At the same time, it is a massive culture change project. We need to alter the practices, the beliefs, and the culture of the city of Santa Fe so that our employees are, in fact, incentivized in ways that don't include money to take risks, to take on more responsibility, and to see the opportunity of working in this city as something that they're enormously proud of and eager to participate in. And historically, for whatever reason, that hasn't been the case. So I think we have in our hands the opportunity to be present at the creation of a fundamentally different city government, a transformed city government. And the team that has been driving that, I'm convinced after reviewing a stack of documents that thick, have taken on work that is enormously complicated and enormously difficult. We have all witnessed in our own lives programs like this that have faltered along the way, come in either substantially late or substantially over budget, and that too loses the confidence and trust of the city and the people who live here if we can't deliver the project as promised. I think at the same time, the people that I spent substantial amount of time with interviewing and discussing the project are very clear to own the mistakes that were made in the process. Those include communication failures. There was not a clear communication plan for this project. There is a stack of documents that identifies all the other kinds of plans that go into implementing this program, and the communication piece was significantly missing. And that, I think, is a lesson for all of us in government, in our own communications with our employees, with each other, and with the people we report to ultimately, who are the people of the city. And that lack of a communication plan is really the heart of the matter. I think at the same time, there are questions about the way this governing body was or wasn't brought into the conversation. There are other incentive programs in the city that we give people incentives for in a variety of circumstances. But that said, typically the governing body doesn't vote on pay raises. That's not really the purview of this governing body. The pay raises, as Councilor Ives mentioned, are typically in budgets. They are included in the documents, and that's often where, if there are pay raises or changes in compensation, they are included. In this case, because we are dealing with a very complicated program, contingency items are often embedded in them, and they are often used for either changes in the process of implementing them, and sometimes it's pay increases, sometimes it's hiring additional consulting services. As I noted in this report, the challenge of getting the project both on time and on budget meant that at one point the project team had to hit the pause button, which meant that it could be seriously delayed in its delivery. They then went to sit down with consultants and asked what are the options, or discussed what are the options for getting it back on track given culture change and technology. And the answers were there are three things you can do. You can hire additional outside consultants and have them implement the package at more expense and without the ownership. You can bring in additional part-time employees, which means that the people who are then dispatched to this project have a question, in morale terms, have a question in their minds, what job will I be returning to after I've done the exceptionally hard work of implementing this program, or implement temporary pay raises to recognize the two kinds of additional responsibilities that were identified to implement the program. In the conversations and the discussions, what emerged was that the third item was the most reasonable way to go, and also one that has been used in other jurisdictions. So I think, in my own view, there were mistakes that were made, and there were flaws in the process and in the communication, but there are, frankly, important issues at stake here for moving forward. Because to derail this project now and to, frankly, impugn this project now is to risk the larger game that we're all here to be part of, the larger purpose that we're all here to be part of, which is to transform and change the way this city government works to meet the expectations of the people who live in the city and the aspirations of the people who work in the city government. Councilor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. So I would never, over the last 2 years, I would never impugn this project. It was started, initiated, actually, even before I was elected. So over the last 2 years, I certainly understand the importance, even without the McCard fraud risk assessment. You know, I have to say, as one of the members of the governing body that carries over from the previous administration, this really cuts to the quick. I am serious. It just does. And you know, when we talked, and I know you've talked to, I would assume all members of the governing body as well as the staff and others. One of the things I brought up when we talked was the extraordinary circumstances that the old governing body was faced in December related to ranked choice voting, and when it was clear we had to move forward, and you started to address this, but you know, it's the full circumstances I think are really analogous. These were extraordinary circumstances in ERP and should have been identified to the governing body. And just as we did with ranked choice voting, we supported it. And I want to, when you need a correction here, it's really $300,000 that was approved. Roughly half went to the city clerk's office, and the other half went to Matt Ross's office for voter education. So small correction there, but that's less important than the fact that, to my way of thinking, the situation is analogous. And I have a hard time, I'm really struggling, and I don't know quite when I'll get to accept this, with why we were not why it was not brought forward. And as Councilor Vigil Koppler said, there was an opportunity 2 weeks ago. My reading of the minutes, I thought I asked the question of Deputy City Manager Martinez about acceleration. Is acceleration necessary because we'd already delayed the critical finance package? The minutes say compress, but however it's reflected, and whether it's an answer to my questions or Councilor Koppler-Vigil, there were opportunities to identify, and it's a mystery to me, and quite frankly, it's offensive to me that it was not. I don't really need to say too much more than that. That's the way it is, and we do move forward. I provided my consent on the city manager's contract because of the critical nature of now budget hearings. So governing bodies, in my experience, in the situations that I've been a part of over the last 2 years, rise to the occasion. We rose to the occasion with the circumstances we have right now in extending the contract for our city manager, and I think that was important. But we've done it in the past, and we would have done it then, and it was unfortunate. So let's move on. We have a lot of work to do. That much is clear, and I'm prepared to do it. But I'll have to say that this one rankles. Okay.
Thank you, Councilor. Yeah, Councilor Rivera.
Thank you. You know, the ERP project is important and no one wants to see it derailed. However, I think the frustration was a lack of transparency, not only for the public, but for this governing body as well, and not being part of the process. We've seen mistakes made with billing just recently where we appreciated the ownership of the mistake and moved forward. We saw that with other things that have come up with regards to the RFP out at the golf club where we reset and we started over. And I don't know if that's a possibility still to reset, move it forward in a process that's transparent, that would allow the public to at least hear and see what's going on, as well as reset and let the governing body really have its say as to what they feel with regards to the 400,000. I don't think anybody has any questions about the project itself. We realize the importance of it, but really the lack of transparency with the 400,000. So that would be my recommendation if we have an option to reset and start over. However, you know, I haven't read your memo completely yet, so I'm looking forward to doing that. But that would be a recommendation if it's at all possible.
Thank you. I would say that that the council is very legitimately concerned about both the substance of the project and the process in this case. And you have seen in this memo, or you will see in this report, that I have said that as mayor under this new charter, as you commented on earlier, Councilor Harris, the mayor now has a different role to play. And I've said in this report that I believe that it is my responsibility to be very much on point with this project because it is so fundamental to what we're trying to do. And I have said in the report that I take it upon myself to be a source of communication, information, and ongoing briefing to the governing body as a whole so that you are not left wondering about the project or its administration. And I think it's, again, my friend Councilor Lindell said to me, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I think that is also a caution we need to be mindful of, that while there were some mistakes that were made, the overall report on the status of the project is that we're moving along. We are seeing the program implemented. We're seeing it move in a very good way, but these things are not guaranteed. These are projects that are very complicated, and there may be times when we'll be coming back to you to brief you on on news less about money and more about the way the program is moving forward and the actual software implications of getting all the pieces to fit together so that we have the system we need to be the modern and responsive government we want to be. So I appreciate your comments. And I don't actually, I think the issue is still obviously alive because of the project is so important. So we need to be on top of it managerially and also in terms of its implications for the city. So I will be on that as the mayor. Any other comments? I think we will take a break till 7 o'clock and then resume our deliberations. Thank you very much. We're back in session. Apologies for being 10 minutes late, but we will now resume. So a little guidance from the clerk. Are we, what are we doing? We're calling the roll. Are we all roll present? Do you need to do that again? We've already done.
Sorry, I can do it. We will move into petitions from the floor.
Very good.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilors, Dave McQuarrie, 2997, Sarasa. Tonight, I wish to talk to you. You recently received a letter from me in behalf of the Mayor's Committee on Disability, where I asked for clarification of one item where we are required to do plan reviews so we can advise the council on the various aspects of ADA that's coming up. And if it complies, well, I'm hoping we get guidance from you and a good answer, because currently some of the staff are very delinquent. They feel that since we are a public body, they can do what they want, and we will follow suit. I won't. And secondly, one item, especially the district courthouse, they have blocked access to it by using curbs. There's no curb cuts. And I was told by the new Public Works Director, who blamed the governing body by saying they are too cheap. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Stephanie Beninateo, good evening, councilors and mayor. I'm echoing in some ways Dave's remarks about staff, and I have brought to your attention that your lifeguards are not really being straight with us about chloramine testing and then using it as an excuse to open the outside doors. And I actually really felt like I was having this conversation in which it was going like this with your email exchange with me, Mayor, because I was talking about that, and you were talking about how they were, and I had mentioned that they were undermining what the facility staff was actually now accomplishing, and you just talked about the facility staff accomplishment. So my feeling is that if you don't address issues that may be somewhat difficult, especially about not honest representation, then you are not going to build much trust. And whether it's in the past or just slightly in the past or the day you came into office or ongoing, transparency about those things and not going, oh, well, that's in the past, let's just go on. I just think there are things that you have to deal with that come from the past in order to engender trust. And I, again, am stepping back for a while to see like what really happens, but I see that as a problem. And I see that your staff, again, not being particularly responsive, again, just telling us there's chloramine tests when the test results itself show there's no reading for that. It's called combined chlorine, and that is chloramine. And I asked for several weeks, I think, of tests, and there are no readings for the combined chlorine. So again, why are they making things up? And again, doesn't engender public trust. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, councilors, mayor. My name is Amber Morningstar Byers, and I'm a senior at the Institute of American Indian Arts here in Santa Fe. I will be graduating in 4 very short weeks, and I have come here today to tell you about my senior project, Strawless Santa Fe. Strawless Santa Fe is a community effort to eliminate single-use plastic straw waste in our beautiful city of Santa Fe. Every day in the United States, 500 million straws are thrown out. After doing some research and then some math, I realized that if Santa Fe's 83,875 residents use all just 1 straw a day at an average weight of 1 gram each, that equals 189 pounds of garbage that we are throwing into our local landfills every single day. Just straw waste. Councilors and community members, I know that creating an ordinance to ban more single-use plastic items like straws might seem difficult and far-fetched. I know that no one wants to be told what to do, but I'll tell you what, the children of this world do not like being told that they are going to be responsible for cleaning up the mess we have made of our environment. I ask those in opposition to policy change, how will you look your children and grandchildren in the eye and tell them that bringing a reusable bag to the grocery store was a little too inconvenient for you? Or to the restaurant and bar owners in this town, how will you tell them that you didn't want to pony up a few extra dollars to pay for a more sustainable option like paper straws? Folks, the future is not tomorrow, it is today. It is right now, and we are not doing enough. I beg of you, councilors, please help Santa Fe lead an example, the fight for environmental justice, and consider the proposed resolution by Councilor Ives, or perhaps an ordinance that would rid our city of as much plastic as possible. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Any other petitions from the floor? Appointments? None this evening. Public hearings. Request from Murphy Oil USA, Inc. for a transfer of ownership and change of location for Canopy Liquor License number 1362.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councilors, this request is here before you. It's Canopy Liquor License number 1362, and it does have package sales. It would transfer from San Busco 2015 LLC, which was doing business as Cost Plus World Market, located at 550 to 560 Montezuma Street. The proposed license will be located at Murphy Express number 8862, located at 3155 Cerrillos Road. The applicant has not begun construction of their building, so as a condition of approval, the applicant will be required to obtain all necessary permits and licenses and comply with all fire, building, and land use code requirements. And once they are in operation, they would be required to comply with all of the city's ordinances.
Thank you. Discussion? Motion.
Move to approve.
You had a comment, Councilor Rivera?
I had a question, but...
Public hearing. Anybody want to testify on this item?
Mayor and Councilor Rivera, nothing more than if there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. For the record, Maurice P. Bonal, former city councilor, used to sit in that seat right there.
Okay. Other testimony?
I do. Stephanie Beninato, P.O. Box 1601, Santa Fe, New Mexico. Again, it would be a good thing, I think, if the city would either have some way of having a map of where liquor stores should be, whether there is really, what kind of traffic is it around this location, if there are already accidents around that location, and again, I'm sure this will be approved, but I think those are kinds of considerations that could be incorporated into a map that would give you some idea of what you're approving, where you're approving it. And I think, again, instead of just having it on the south side of town, this should be something that we should map out, like how many restaurants have liquor licenses, how many alcohol liquor places are there, and where are they? What kind of density do we have? And again, I think this is important. We have a DWI problem, and this could at least help you make more informed decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Rivera.
Thank you, Mayor. Yolanda, just looking at the map, this looks like it's, to me, it looks like the old Village Inn building.
That's correct.
Okay, that was my only question. I just wasn't sure where it was at. Thank you, Mayor.
Public hearing is closed. Any other comments? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
All right.
This would be with the conditions, correct?
With the conditions.
Thank you. Ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Councillor Vihil Coppler?
Yes.
Councillor Abeyta?
Yes.
Councillor Harris? Councillor Ives?
Yes.
Councillor Lindell? Councillor Rivera?
Yes.
Councillor Romero Worth? Mayor Weber?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion is approved.
Request from DH Winery for a wine grower license with on-premise consumption, patio service, and package sales to be located at DH Winery.
Yes, sir.
City Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. The only thing that I would add to this is that the winery is located at 139 West San Francisco Street. The applicant has not completed construction. They're doing some interior remodel. Therefore, as a condition of approval, the applicant will be required to obtain all necessary permits and licenses and comply with all fire, building, and land use code requirements. Again, once they are in business, they would be required to comply with all of the city's ordinances.
Thank you. We go to the public hearing part of this. Is there someone who wishes to be heard?
I guess I can just go ahead and state my name and say hello. Hi, my name is Sandra Pacheco. I'm the National Sales Director with the winery. I thank you all for seeing our project tonight, and I'm hoping that you will see this as a valuable asset to Santa Fe. We're really excited about coming into Santa Fe. We are located in the southern part of the state, and we've been wanting for a long time to come up north. This is my home, where I grew up, so it means a lot to me to now have a presence in Santa Fe, and I hope that the information that I provided you in the packet, or that Yolanda shared with you, has enough information to let you know what we're doing and how we're doing it, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Christopher Goblay, 518 Old Santa Fe Trail. Mayor Weber, city councilors, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I represent the New Mexico Wine Growers Association. I work with all 52 wineries around the state. I was recently in front of a different council, but here in this building, as we approved a tasting room for Noisy Water Winery, which is now open on West San Francisco Street, and they are really enjoying their their new home up here. They're from Ruidoso, and this would make our third winery that we now have in the Santa Fe downtown area. We like to refer to them as clusters, when we can get a couple of our wineries working together to promote each other and to promote the other craft beverage producers. They all ships rise. And so I stand here in support of the St. Clair and the DH brand, bringing a new concept here to Santa Fe. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other?
Stephanie Beninatto, I'll just say same comment as before. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard? Okay, the hearing part is closed. Yes, Councilor Lindell.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Yes, sir. Councilor Beta? Yes. Councilor Harris? Yes. Councilor Ives?
Yes.
Councilor Lindell?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Romero Worth? Yes. Councilor Vihil Coppler?
Yes.
And Mayor Weber?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion is approved.
Number 3, request from the Alley Santa Fe Properties for a transfer of location and ownership of interlocal dispenser liquor license number 0044 with on-premise consumption and patio service from DNA's Pub, Inc. to the Alley Santa Fe Properties.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I will just add to what you have mentioned. The license is coming from 221 3rd Street in Maxwell, New Mexico, and it will be located at the Alley, as you mentioned, 153 Paseo de Peralta, Suites A and B, and that's located at the De Vargas Center. The applicant has not begun construction, therefore, as a condition of approval, the applicant will be required to obtain all necessary permits and licenses and comply with all fire, building, and land use requirements. Once they are in business, we would recommend that they comply with all of the city's ordinances.
Thank you. Public hearing is open. People wish to be heard.
Mayor, Councilor, my name is Carl Summer, P.O. Box 2476, Santa Fe, New Mexico. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. We're all very excited, and there's a whole entourage of people here in support. They're not going to get up and speak, but I stand for any questions you might have of them or of us. We're excited about this.
Thank you very much. Council, you have a question? You want to wait till there's more? Anyone else wish to speak to this matter? Councilor, did you have something? The hearing part is closed. Now it's your turn.
Well, I would make a motion to approve, and along with that, I would just say how excited I am that my friends, Hannah and Joey Padilla, whom I know from a different business, and that would be a dog-related business. They've been terrific operators and changed the lives for lots and lots and lots of dogs in this city with the work that they've done, and I'm really thrilled for them to have a new adventure. And I'm also thrilled because I haven't been bowling in a long time, and I'm excited about going bowling. So I make a motion to an enthusiastic motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Please.
I just want to make sure that includes the conditions. Thank you. Councilor Harris? Councilor Ives?
Yes.
Councilor Lindell?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera? Yes. Councilor Romero Worth? Yes. Councilor Vihil Coppler?
Yes.
Councilor Beta? Yes. Mayor Weber?
Yes, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item number 4. Request from Premier Distributing Company for a transfer of ownership, change of stockholders of their beer distribution wholesaler liquor license. Would you care to speak to this?
Thank you, Mayor. So this request is coming to you. It's considered a transfer of ownership, but in reality, it's just a change of stockholders. And the license is located at Premier Distributing Company, and it's at 2680 Sawmill Road. And we would just recommend that this business be required to comply with all of our ordinances.
Okay. Public hearing? Yeah, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors. My name is Jimmy Bates, 11300 Carmel Avenue, Northeast Albuquerque. I'm Executive Vice President of Premier Distributing Company and would stand for any questions that you or anyone in attendance may have.
Thank you. Other people wish to be heard? No? Any questions? Okay. Public hearing is closed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Councilor Ives.
Simply make a motion to approve.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Councilor Ives.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilor Lindell?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera? Yes. Councilor Romero Worth? Yes. Councilor Vihil Coppler?
Yes.
Councilor Abeyta? Yes. Councilor Harris? Yes. Mayor Weber?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion has been approved.
Thank you. Thank you. Item number 5, consideration of bill number 2018-3, adoption of an ordinance.
2018-9.
9.
Yes, sir.
Apologies.
Jesse is presenting on this.
Jesse, are you our source?
Mayor, councilors, Kelly was staff, but as you know, she's no longer here, so I'll let Councilor Harris give you the lowdown on this. Yeah.
Very good. Councilor Harris.
You know, I'm glad to get to this point because this is something that I started to work on with members of the audit committee before the McCard fraud risk assessment. So there was an understanding within the audit committee that things needed to improve. And basically what this does, it clarifies a couple of mechanical things, but more importantly, as the title says, it strengthens and clarifies the role of the audit committee. There is still some mechanics to work out. And again, there's a lot of participation throughout by the audit committee in which they are to be commended. And so some of the administrative procedures are still to be worked out, but everybody agrees that this is, again, the audit committee, myself, the finance director was part of this, that we should move forward and it'll help us operate in the future.
Yes, Councilor.
I have just a few questions.
Sure.
Some of the other items that have come before us have explicitly stated without compensation. So will this committee not be compensated?
They will not be compensated.
Okay.
They're not now, and that was never part of the discussion.
Okay, and then on page 7 of that copy, says the members shall reside in the state of New Mexico. So does that mean anyone outside the city could be on the committee, and if so, would they get per diem to come here?
You know, our chair actually resides in Espanola, and he is an attorney, as you see, as one of the requirements. And so this, again, has been, I think it'd be pretty far afield to come from Las Lunas or, further south, but certainly I think, we've had members from outside the city limits in the past, and we do so right now.
Do they get per diem?
No, and there's no per diem. There's no compensation that I've ever been aware of, and none was requested.
All right, and then I just have another question about terms, because when you add it all up after the first appointment, it's like it could be as long as a 12-year term. Is that too long? Or is that I don't know. It seems to me sometimes you need to infuse a little bit more ideas or whatever, and sometimes people get stagnant. Yeah. So I don't know. Someone could serve for 12 years, am I correct? And I guess that's okay.
I suppose. What I do know is that just like you spoke earlier to your BTAC, all of the terms are current, and there have been no expired terms in the current 5 members.
Okay.
But my own experience, people get a little weary after a while, and I'd be surprised if somebody really wanted to hang in there for 12 years. But
well, I would say that some of our former counselors have hung in for quite a long time, so I'm not so sure about that.
Well, that's true, but that was an extraordinary situation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Other questions or comments?
If I may, Mayor, there is a small, there's an amendment sheet, just a couple of small grammatical errors that are corrected. Mr. Guillen picked up one and I picked up the other. So I would like to make a motion to approve with the amendments.
Public hearing?
Pardon?
Public hearing?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, of course.
Anyone wish to speak to this? Yeah, please.
Stephanie Beninatto, I appreciate that. There's an attempt at being more transparent concerning fiscal matters and the audit committee. And again, just making these changes that clarify whatever, was not as clear as it could have been. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to this matter? No. Okay, public hearing is closed.
So the motion and the second still stand?
Well, I think you have to do it again.
Okay. Move to approve with amendment.
Second.
Very good. Clerk?
Yes, sir. Councillor Lindell? Councillor Rivera?
Yes.
Councillor Romero Worth? Yes. Councillor Vihil Coppler?
Yes.
Councillor Beta?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Ives?
Yes.
Mayor Weber?
Yes.
Thank you. The ordinance has been approved.
Okay. We move to item 6 on the agenda.
So, Mayor, you can hear items 6, A, B, C, and D as one public hearing.
Why don't we do that?
Thank you, Mayor Weber and members of the council. Just a quick question. Should I, for formality's sake, read through the captions, or do we need to go through? Okay. So, so we have case number 2017-133, general plan amendment for the northerly portion of the Santa Fe Civic Housing Authority Hopewell Man Lease Tract. And our agent for each of these items is Jennifer Jenkins of Jenkins Gavin, agent for the Santa Fe Civic Housing Authority, who is the lessee, is requesting approval of a general plan amendment to amend the existing general plan future land use map designation for approximately 0.34 acres from medium density residential to office. The area is located north of 1773-1787 Hopewell Street. The next case is 2017-134, which is the rezoning for this northerly portion of the Hopewell Man Lease Tract for approximately 0.34 acres from R5 residential, 5 dwelling units per acre, to C1 office and related commercial at the same location, 1773-1787 Hopewell Street. Case number 2017-140 is the general plan amendment for the Housing Authority Hopewell Man Lease Tract, and this area is to amend the existing general plan future land use map designation for approximately 5.49 acres from high density residential to office. And this area of the tract is located both north and south of Hopewell and Man Streets and west of Espinacita Street. And lastly, case 2017-139 is the corresponding rezoning for the Housing Authority Hopewell Man Lease Tract for 5.49 acres from R21 residential 21 dwelling units per acre to C1 office and related commercial. So, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, the Santa Fe Civic Housing Authority is on a long-term 99-year lease with the city of Santa Fe. The city owns this tract of land, and currently the total acreage is 5.83 approximately. And early on, the Civic Housing Authority met with land use staff to talk about some of their plans for this land, and the plans were really that they wanted to add medical clinics to the site in an area where there are currently 8 vacant residential units. So they've been vacant for some time, and they wanted to repurpose that portion of the site, and that's located just on Hopewell Street, south of the Arroyo. And so there are some graphics in here, and I think our applicant has some graphics that illustrate this a little bit better than what's in the packet. But they came to staff and said, just wanted to talk through what they could do with the zoning, and it was explained that with R21 zoning, it's really only high-density residential. So with their plans being to use, to kind of demolish and rebuild a medical clinic on the site while maintaining the 40 units of low-income housing on the southern portion of the site, also contemplating an area to the north of the Arroyo, which is a remnant of land that they were considering utilizing for a single-family residence. What zoning designation could accommodate all of those uses? And so staff had recommended C1. C1 preserves the high-density zoning, high-density residential. It's the same density factor. And so they decided to proceed with a rezoning request from what we learned later on, once the applicant had submitted, is that there's kind of a unique circumstance. There's R5 zoning to the north of the Arroyo and R21 zoning to the south. So it's pretty unusual, but this zoning, this rezoning would allow all of the existing and proposed uses. No affordable housing will be lost as a result of the general plan amendments and rezoning, and will allow for a medical clinic, which is really intended to be an amenity for the residents who are currently having to drive long distances on and off site to access those services. So I'm happy to stand for questions. The Planning Commission had recommended approval, and that's what we bring forward to you today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there someone who wishes to be heard on this matter?
Good evening, Mayor, Councilors. I'm Jennifer Jenkins with Jenkins Gavin, and it's my honor to be here this evening on behalf of the Santa Fe Civic Housing Authority with the rezone request that is before you. Bear with me 1 second while I plug in. I don't know if there's anybody in the control room, but if I could have the monitors, please. Do you want to go check? So I think the staff report was very, very clear and speaks for itself. There's just a couple of points that I think are very, very important to clarify. As Margaret mentioned, this property is owned by the City of Santa Fe. The Santa Fe Civic Housing Authority has leased this property from the city since 1963 for the purpose of providing affordable low-income housing in the Santa Fe community. And the lease was just recently renewed in 2013 for a 99-year term. A condition of that lease is that the existing 40 residential units are retained on the site. Okay? They are not going anywhere. We will all be dead if they do go anywhere. But for 99 years, they are there. In addition to that, the low-income tax credit financing mandates that the 40 dwelling units that are currently there are retained for 45 years. So we have double layers of regulation that are protecting the housing. The housing is not going anywhere. The purpose of this rezone is to provide much-needed services to this community. The beauty of C1, it's actually a really great zoning category. It is, in a lot of ways, a very true mixed-use zoning. And do you know what's happening with vacant C1 parcels in Santa Fe right now? They're being developed with housing, because they can be. So when we have R21 zoning, basically C1 encapsulates R21 zoning regulations. If you want to build multifamily housing in C1, they just refer you to the R21 regulations. If you do it like that, you can do it. So it's really great, and it provides the opportunity to do a mix of uses on the same parcel of land. Now, Santa Fe has a mixed-use zoning, but it's not great zoning. It has a lot of layers of restrictions, and you got to do it this way and that way. It doesn't have a lot of flexibility involved in it. So, but the C1 does, and C2 as well. I mean, you can do multifamily in C2 zoning, which is fantastic. I'm going to be bringing in 2 multifamily communities for review through the land use department. One of them's on a C1 track, the other one's on a C2 track. So that's what we're seeing happening. So I just think that's a very important point. There were concerns expressed about that, because we obviously can't lose any stock of our low-income housing in this community. But the trend for provisions of housing is about not isolating the housing. We need to be providing services, especially with our low-income residents. Those services need to be part and parcel to that project. And so we are really excited that we are working with Presbyterian Medical Services as well as Via Therese Clinic. They are both longtime providers of medical services to our lower income residents in Santa Fe, and they are both committed to being on this property. But of course, we can't sign them up until we have the proper zoning. And so we are very excited about this. And also, as Margaret mentioned, this property currently has split zoning, which is actually prohibited in the code. So we're kind of correcting a little bit of that issue. So the entire property will be C1. The residential is a permissible use. The medical clinics are a permissible use. And so it really creates an opportunity for us to, as she said, repurpose this. The 8 units that we intend to demolish have already been replaced. They've been built, brand new, beautiful homes on this property, and so we're not losing any housing. These are just very old. They're nicknamed the Ugly 8 because they need to go. They're just old, they're substandard, and so we have an opportunity. And the current buildings are about 5,600 square feet, and the 2 buildings that we're proposing are about 5,600 square feet. So we're really replacing square footage in kind. So with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions. Thank you.
We actually we'll hear some more testimony, and then we'll go to questions.
This one.
It's a public hearing. For TV show.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Larry Martinez. I am with Presbyterian Medical Services, and I'm here to speak on behalf of my organization, which has committed some considerable resources to this project. The basic motivation we have for occupying the clinic, which is planned to be built, one of the clinics, is that we are a private nonprofit organization which has been serving the healthcare needs of the city of Santa Fe since 1969. And we are located elsewhere in the state, but I'm responsible for the operation of services here within the city of Santa Fe. And while we have seen a significant increase in the number of people with a payer source to pay for healthcare services, we've not seen a commensurate increase in the number of providers who can meet their needs. The increase is a result of the Medicaid expansion, which took place as a part of the Affordable Care Act, which was passed in 2010 and for the most part continues to remain intact, and also the establishment of the New Mexico Health Insurance Exchange. That has led to the purchase of a considerable number of families in the community of private insurance with the assistance of federal subsidies. But we feel that this area has approximately 300 low-income households in the area who
do not have adequate access to health care. And as a federally qualified health center, we will turn no one away, regardless of ability to pay or not. If we identify individuals who appear to be Medicaid eligible, we will help them get enrolled. We will also assist individuals in the purchase of insurance through the Health Insurance Exchange. And if they have no payer source and do not qualify, we offer a sliding fee scale in which, on the basis of their providing us with documentation concerning their economic circumstances, we discount up to 80% of the bill. And if they can't pay the 20%, we don't do anything about that either. So we certainly hope that this project will go forward and that we will continue to be a vital and participating organization in the delivery of healthcare services. It is our proposal to provide primary care services, which are medical services. As you well know, we are a major provider of behavioral health services at many of our other sites in the community of Santa Fe, but it's our intention to provide only primary care services at this site, although there may be a time when we could provide some behavioral health therapy and other types of service along those lines, although we have sufficient facilities to do that. So thank you very much. We appreciate your consideration of this project.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Ron Aldridge, and I'm chair of the board of Villa Teresa Catholic Clinic. I also teach at the University of New Mexico in healthcare administration and have testified before this group, the former group, before on other issues. The Villa Teresa Clinic has been in existence for 81 years. It's been at the same location, downtown Santa Fe, behind the cathedral, and it's really not in a very accessible area. As we look at the demographics of the population in that particular area, the people that we are attempting to serve just aren't nearby. So one of the things that we really see as an attraction in terms of this new location, it is much closer to the population that we believe needs care and service, particularly the Agua Fria Village area and Airport Road area. Agua Fria Village has a 37% uninsured rate, a lot of undocumented persons who need access to care. So despite the fact that New Mexico has made significant progress through leadership from Larry Martinez and others in terms of providing access, there's still a huge part of our population that does not have access to care. We are different than Presbyterian Medical Services in that we are a free clinic. We are the only free clinic that exists in the state of New Mexico, and we are supported principally by grants and support and voluntary events. Last week, for example, we had a Zumbathon at the Chavez Center and raised about $4,500, but every $4,500 helps. At the other end of the spectrum, we have a $150,000 grant from Christus Health that's supporting our expansion in a variety of different areas. So the clinic, as a free clinic, provides care to all who come there. There's no requirements for any payments. They can make a voluntary contribution if they wish to. We also provide medical and pediatric care. And probably one thing that's different than many other providers is we are also providing dental services, so we support the development of oral health. And we have a variety of programs. For example, one of the recent events that occurred was that we have a group of children who desperately needed braces. We have a whole series of donors, dentists who are donating their services. We had one of the dental clinics decided they couldn't do it, and our executive director, Victoria Otero, was able to get two other donors, and I've renamed her Victoria Otero Si Se Puede because it's such a great effort that's being made. So a lot of the services that we provide support in oral health, which is very important. New Mexico suffers significant issues around lack of access for oral health, and we believe that being in this location will enable us to be more accessible to the people we serve, better access, not so many issues of parking and all the other areas. And then we're looking at a variety of other services. We're reaching out to free clinics, Healthy Sundays programs, where we're going to be providing support and services and access to be doing testing for people to help them identify healthcare needs. And we have a group of volunteer physicians and other providers who are agreeing to provide this support. Just add that we have had a long-term positive relationship with Presbyterian Medical Services, so being next door to them in another clinic building, I think it's very likely that we will find areas in which we can collaborate and work together and be very supportive of the population we're trying to serve. So let me stop there. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to respond.
Thank you, sir. Others wishing to be heard?
Excuse me. Stephanie Beninato. I think that, I guess my biggest concern and biggest question is that for a long time the city has talked about having affordable housing, but saying that there weren't any places for affordable housing, yet there is this lot of land that was underutilized. And although I think having a clinic there, particularly devoted to serving that population and then other populations close by, is a good idea, although I do point out that Christus St. Vincent's is really just a couple of miles away, not miles and miles away, and accessible by bus. However, you know, again, the clinic's a good idea. My concern is that by making it C1, that really it will encourage it to be more office and commercial rather than multi or dense residential units. And I think that it would be a shame, really, for the city to lose what is now really supposed to be residential housing. That's what it was set up to be. And really, the lease wasn't renegotiated all that long ago, that if there needed to be a change, why wasn't it negotiated at that time? Why isn't there more specificity about what will happen on which plot of these, you know, different pieces of land? Could there be some inclusion that at least X% of this other land, the C1, that it will be devoted to affordable or workforce housing, for example, so that use of the land will not be totally lost and not just relying on the marketplace wanting to do multifamily in C1 zones. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to be heard on this matter? Okay, that part of the hearing is closed. Now, Councilor Rivera.
Before we start, I was advised by the attorney that I should disclose that I do work with Christus St. Vincent as a manager there. I don't believe there's a conflict here, so I'll continue in the discussion and the vote.
Thank you, sir. Others who have questions or comments about the matter? Yes, Councilor Ives.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question. You know, we have in the past adopted essential elements of a renter's declaration of rights, and we encouraged discussions with various community organizations, and of course in the Hopewell Man area, Chainbreakers is a significant, has a significant presence in terms of participation in the organization. Have they been involved in these discussions and participated?
Mayor, members of the council, and Councilor Ives, I don't recall in our early neighborhood notification meeting that Chainbreaker was present in the discussion when we initially talked about this with the community. However, we did have several community members. It was a very well-attended ENN that did have some concerns about the neighborhood being given away to commercial, and you know, we made it very clear that the affordable housing on this site, the site as a whole is substantially built out, and there aren't any opportunities really to kind of squeeze in more housing or make this a the most intensive of the C1 commercial uses. And Chainbreaker specifically was not present, but I believe residents of the Civic Housing Authority at Hopewell were there, and their concerns were addressed.
And, it would seem odd that this project could move this far forward without them having been aware of it. Personally, I think having more clinics in that area, and I would certainly note the fairly recent presence of La Familia, I think over on Taos or Navajo Street. So it's actually wonderful to see the providers coming into the places within the city that have had have been significantly underserved. So, and I certainly know the great work done by both of the organizations who have spoken here tonight. And Mr. Aldrich, I apologize for occasionally parking your spots down by the cathedral, but it's usually after hours or on Sunday mornings, so I hope that hasn't been a problem. But I would certainly move to approve.
Thank you. We have a couple comments. Councilor Abeyta.
Thank you, Mayor. One of my earliest childhood memories was going to the Via Therese Clinic at the cathedral and getting a pair of glasses because I couldn't see. My parents couldn't afford to take us to an optometrist, much less get a pair of glasses, and that's I think sometimes that's forgotten, that something as basic as being able to see our children don't have access to in our community, especially in these neighborhoods. As far as PMS, Mr. Martinez, I've done a lot of work with you over the years at the county, and you've done an amazing job with health in our community and providing for the low income in our community, and I'm glad to see that again where you're partnering and working with the Housing Authority to bring the services to the people that need it most. And I would hope that as we move forward, we start looking at District 3, because there's a lot of families that need the services in District 3, and I'm glad that we're moving closer. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilor Rivera, you had a comment, question?
Just, I'm hoping they can get that up because I had some questions regarding the map.
Okay. We're trying to get the technology to work. Okay. In the meantime, maybe do you think we need the laptop to get the questions answered, or
I don't know. We'll give it a shot. Jennifer, so exactly what area are we talking about? On page 58 of the packet, our packet, it has Espenicita Street with St. Michael's Drive, I think, towards the bottom of the page, and then a whole lot of orange area and red area, and then on page, a few pages down on page 62, we have some highlighted red areas that are on the other side of Hopewell Street. So,
yeah, let's
Okay.
take the mountain to Mohammed.
Okay, so this has the site outlined, okay? That's the zoning map, or is that the future land use map?
yeah, that would have been a good map for us to have.
So this has the site outlined, so it's about 5.8 acres. And so this is Hopewell Street
Right.
here. And so you see the little bit of yellow? There's an arroyo right along that line between the R5 and the R21 zoning.
Okay.
And so that's the arroyo. And so that's when we discovered that the little sliver of land on the north side of the arroyo is zoned R5, when the remainder of the property is zoned R21.
Okay.
Okay? And so where the clinics are going to go is, this is a zooming in to the property on the north side of the arroyo. Here, and then this is this little piece that is accessed from Quapaw Street to the north.
Right.
And so these are the ugly 8, which will be demolished, and the clinics will sit right there.
Okay.
And you can see here, it shows where the clinics will go.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Just wanted that clarification.
Great. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else want to take a look?
I understood, and maybe just to clarify a point that Ms. Beninato kind of spoke to, but the small sliver is going to have one affordable house.
Yeah, so this is the little piece on the other side of the Arroyo, and it's part of the Quapaw neighborhood, and so it'll just be it's tiny, it'll just be a single-family residence, yeah. There's no plans immediately to do anything right there, but that's what's, permissible.
Yeah, exactly, thank you.
Councilor Rivera.
Thanks. So now that I have that oriented, I don't know if this is staff or Jennifer, but when they looked at parking and the traffic issues, there were many in the ENN that had concerns about that. Have you done a separate study, or has the city done a look?
We haven't done a separate study. Typically, we are adequately parked in accordance with code requirements based on the requirements for a medical clinic. And as we move through the building permit process, but in our previous discussions with the traffic division, these two small clinics, it's very unlikely it's going to warrant a traffic study. And although we obviously have to provide adequate parking, there, a lot of the clients here are going to be walking. A lot of them are going to be utilizing the bus, and of course we'll accommodate vehicles as well. But we're not anticipating, as we go through the building permit process, we will be re-engaging with the traffic division. But on our earlier discussions with them, they did not have any concerns.
Okay, so you have a number of spots for is there a separation between employee parking? How many employees do they anticipate?
No, we don't know yet, but the requirement for medical clinics is 1 space per 200 square feet of net leasable area, which is the same requirement as you would have for retail. So it's pretty intensive. An office, you would only have to do 1 space per 350 square feet. And so, so there is plenty of parking. So that 1 per 200 assumes clients as well as employees. So it's all encapsulated in the same figure.
Okay, I'll leave it up to you, but maybe think about a traffic study as you're going through the rest of the process. Might be worth it. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? I have one general question. I think, or comment/question. We spend a lot of time talking about housing, but I think we need to talk about neighborhoods as places where the housing and the amenities coexist. And I'm very supportive of health care that is close to where people live. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity, or you've thought about other amenities that you would want to add to this project, so that we are reinforcing the sense not just of housing/clinic, but a real neighborhood that has the services and the amenities that any neighborhood would want as part of their livability factor.
Sure, absolutely. Mayor Weber, councilors, as part of the Hopewell Man community, there is a community center there that has had various activities in it over the years. It was the Boys and Girls Club was housed there, but then they decided they needed to focus more of their efforts on the south side of town. And so, the Housing Authority is always looking for opportunities to partner with local they've done computer classes, but they really haven't found the partnership yet that is ideal for the space. The space is pretty generously sized, and so it's really about them seeking out the best partnership. But the facility's there, the building is there, so it's really just about finding the right partnership. So there's been a little bit of turnover in that over the years, so they've really been focusing. Now that they've finished some of there's been a lot of rehabilitation of this project. The project looks very different now than it did 10 years ago. It really looks wonderful, and so now that a lot of that's behind them, they can, focus a little more on the right partnership to make the best use of that building.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Councilor Ives.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would note for Via Teresa and PMS that there are efforts of the St. Vincent de Paul Society to initiate a program in the Hopewell Man area, and I will share your contact information with folks who are involved in that, because there will be efforts to try and aggregate all those provider organizations within the area in terms of providing service to the clientele in need there. So hopefully you'll be hearing from them before long.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to make one additional comment. Both Larry and I served on the board of Christus St. Vincent's at the same time. I was chair of the board and was on that board for 6 years. And we have very good collaborative relationships and support from Christus. A number of the physicians and nurse practitioners and others who volunteer will be people who are there and working. I saw a list today of people who are volunteering for our Sunday clinics, and it's just an amazing group of physicians and providers. I think one of the things that the reason they're so supportive of what it is that we're both doing is that the very worst place for many people to go for care is to go to a hospital. If they can get care in their home setting, in the area where they live, much less cost, much more accessible. And one of the things that I teach in the College of Population Health as well, there's a strong focus on the social determinants of health. Mm-hmm. It's not just access to health care, it's housing, it's nutrition, it's education. So all of those things integrated together make a great difference. So just know that, that while there is a close proximity to Christus St. Vincent's, the goal isn't to bring people there. The goal is to provide care and support to the greatest extent possible in the community where they live, much in the way you described, Mayor. So.
Thank you. You spoke to my point more eloquently than I did. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, I'd like to address your question also with respect to building up a neighborhood. Let me just remind everyone that Presbyterian Medical Services also provides Head Start services throughout the community, and we're working very closely with the United Way of Santa Fe County, the Santa Fe Community Foundation, and quite a number of other organizations in the development of the early childhood education center that's going to be located in the former Connie Elementary School, which is just north of this site, but very much a part of the neighborhood. So I think we're seeing some wonderful things happening in this community in terms of the collaboration among the many organizations. So there will also be specialized early childhood care services in the area, which will make a very good complement to the medical services that are going to be provided by both Presbyterian Medical Services and Via Teresa Clinic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I wouldn't speak for Councilor Villarreal, who's not here tonight, but I would, if she were here, I think she would talk about the conference she's at right now, which is about development without displacement, and the need for us to think in a comprehensive way about what makes neighborhoods healthy, but also doesn't remove people or gentrify the neighborhood so that the people who have lived there for a long time are not displaced by efforts to improve the quality of life in the neighborhood. And I'm sure she'll brief us on that when she gets back from Chicago. But the other point is, I think we've seen in many circumstances where there can be a catalyzing project that becomes the basis for other elements to come together to really speak to the social determinants of health and to make clear that this is not a one-off opportunity, but rather potentially the beginning of something that's much more cohesive and positive for the identity and the benefits of the neighborhood going forward. I think that's in the spirit in which I hear you talking, and the opportunity that Councilor Ives spoke to of really bringing other people to the neighborhood who can add value. Councilor Harris.
To your point, Mayor, in the kind of the line of discussion right now, I think we should, as we look at the bigger picture, remember about that what we're trying to do with the Midtown Link, which this is a block away from. Hasn't happened yet, but I'm convinced over time we're really going to see a much more vibrant section of our town that's right smack dab in the middle, that will provide services to all sorts of people and entertainment and things such, and jobs. So again, I think this is I think it's a great development, and hopefully it will be the catalyst that you mentioned. We're always looking for the catalyst. We certainly talk about that in terms of the Santa Fe University of Art and Design, and so I put this in the same context. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Are we ready for a motion? We've got a motion. Did I
So,
miss it?
Mayor,
Just wasn't sure if we needed to.
we will need a separate motion and vote on each
item.
resolution and ordinance. So the first one would be 6A.
All right, so we've got to take them one at a time. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, so I assume we're starting with A.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve item 6A.
Second.
All right.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Romero Worth? Councilor Vihel Coppler? Councilor Abeyta?
Yes.
Councilor Harris? Councilor Ives?
Yes.
Councilor Lindell? Yes. Mayor Weber?
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution 23 has been approved.
Let's try 6B.
Move to approve.
Second.
Councilor Romero Worth? Councilor Vihel Coppler? Councilor Abeyta?
Yes.
Councilor Harris? Councilor Ives?
Yes.
Councilor Lindell? Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Mayor Weber?
Yes.
Thank you. Ordinance 10 has been approved.
We move to 6C.
Move to approve.
Councilor Vihel Coppler? Yes. Councilor Abeyta?
Yes.
Councilor Harris? Councilor Ives?
Yes.
Councilor Lindell? Yes. Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Romero Worth? Mayor Weber?
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution 24 has been approved.
And that brings us to 6D.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Councilor Abeyta?
Yes.
Councilor Harris? Yes. Councilor Ives?
Yes.
Councilor Lindell? Yes. Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Romero Worth? Yes. Councilor Vihel Coppler? Yes. Mayor Weber?
Yes.
Thank you. Ordinance number 11 has been approved.
Before we adjourn, can I just offer a thank you to my fellow members on the governing body for your comments this evening about the paper that I produced and the issue that triggered it. I thought it was a very fruitful discussion, and I'm very appreciative of you for bringing it to me and to the council, and then everyone having a chance to speak. And I hope we continue to push forward on both the project, which is so critical, but also on our collaboration on making sure that we're all fully informed and feel like we're brought along in the process. So I want to thank you for your help. Thank you all.
Adjourned.
Adjourned. And with that, we are adjourned. We stand adjourned. We sit adjourned and stand.
We recline.
We.
We think it's this cable.
I think it is too.
This
You know,
cable.
when he was experimenting with it before, it was going on and off.
I think it's got to be the cable too, because everything else is working. Everything else that plugs in
Right.
is working.
Yeah. And when he plugged in at a different place, it worked just fine. So.
Yeah, and you know what? I always carry an extra HDMI cable with me with my stuff. And I took it out because I needed it someplace else. I didn't put it back in my briefcase.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where I am. I got 4 recorders in this backpack.
Redundancy. Yeah, that's sad.